So this is going to be a very special video. Quite literally, these are the special class, the Sonder class, of course, the Mercedes S-Class. We have every generation, all 7 Mercedes S-Class lined up here, starting with the first car to use the S-Class name, the 116, and this is the proper one with the 6.9 litre V8 under the bonnet, all the way up to the latest, currently on sale, 223. We're here at Immendingen, which is Mercedes' own proving ground, and we're going to drive back to back every single generation S-Class to decide once and for all which is the greatest S-Class ever made. So what better way to start comparing every generation of S-Class than with the original? The very first car to use the S-Class name is a 450 SEL 6.9. That's right, this car has a 6.9 litre V8, producing something like 286 horsepower, which in the late 1970s was outrageous. In fact, this was one of the fastest cars in the world at the time, which meant it was a favourite with many Formula One drivers, such as James Hunt. It's not just the speed though, this was the very first production car in the world with ABS, meaning not only did it go well, it also stopped well. This particular car is a 1977 and it has belonged to Mercedes from new, which is particularly impressive when I look at the clocks and I see that it's got 650,000 kilometres on the clock. And I'm sure Mercedes will have looked after it in the near 5 decades that they've had it. But I have to say, the condition is remarkable inside and out. I was a little bit shocked when I saw the mileage on this car. It drives nicely too, and that engine still pulls like a train. This is a proper gentleman's express, the perfect car for the Autobahn, and perfect family car because there's 5 seats, all trimmed in velour, with all of the mod cons you might expect in the 1970s, which in fairness isn't a lot. Sunroof, heated seats, electric windows, that is a big deal, climate control, and even this old school Becker Mexico stereo. And Mercedes didn't just take a huge engine and put it in a huge car and hope for the best. It's even got hydro-pneumatic suspension, which keeps it level in the bends. And you can tell why this car was not only rarer than a Rolls-Royce in the 1970s, it was actually more expensive than a Rolls-Royce in the 1970s because it really was cutting-edge stuff. What a beast. I absolutely love this car, but I think it's time to jump in the next generation of S-Class and see what we think of that, see if we prefer it to this one. Now, this certainly could be a contender for the best S-Class, in my opinion. This is the W126. It's the longest running and most produced S-Class, running from the late 70s to the early 90s. This particular car is a very late example, 1991 560 SEL, meaning it's got the 275 horsepower, 5.6 litre V8. Properly cool thing. These cars were built like tanks, still had many innovations, like one of the very first cars to have an airbag and catalytic converters. But I think this car, just the way it looks and the velour seats in here, is definitely a Bruno Secco masterpiece. And it's an honour to drive this particular car because not only is it the best engine or one of the coolest S-Classes, this car's only done 4,000 kilometres, so it's an absolute gem. You know, the condition of the wood, the condition of the leather. This car's like brand new, but it's a model, be it a 91, it's a model from the 1980s. So it really is like going back in time. And I have to say, the acceleration, the way it handles, the purr of that V8, you would not know that this car is over 30 years old. As Johnny would say, this is a sweet, sweet car. So we're now behind the wheel of the W140 S-Class. This particular car is a 500 SEL, quite an early car. However, the 140 was the very first Mercedes production car, like that one there, S600, to come with a V12. However, this one, the V8, 5 litre V8, 326 horsepower, the same engine that was found in the R129 SL, also very similar to the engine, or derived from the engine, that Mercedes actually raced at Le Mans with the likes of the Sauber. So this is a special car with a special engine. Features it has include double glazing, which means it's completely silent in the cabin in here, as well as ultimate luxury and comfort with memory seats, leather everywhere, you know, multiple stages to the armrest. Everything's very complicated, but very luxurious. And again, this car is a beautiful example of the 140. Everything's in perfect condition, and it's just 14,000 kilometers on the clock. So an honor to be able to get behind the wheel of this car, just to smell the leather. This is probably how this car would have smelled in the early 1990s. billions of Deutschmarks are spent developing this series to make it an absolute step above the previous, the 126, to define it as the class leader in luxury transportation, to stop people buying the BMW 7 Series or even things like a Rolls-Royce. So this car, the engineering that went into it is just exceptional, and it's testament to the fact that this thing still drives and runs perfectly today, because those hours, years even, were spent developing, probably here at Immendingen, every single component on this car. We're here to find the best generation of S-Class. This one might be my favourite, but for sort of quite biased reasons. I actually own one of these. This is, of course, the W220, the S-Class from the early 2000s. Many people say it's the worst generation of S-Class, although I think it's quite telling that we're here at a celebration of the S-Class, and the electric S-Class, the EQS, is nowhere to be seen. So I would argue that this is not the worst generation of S-Class. I love our W220 S600. This is a later one, a facelift, an S320 4MATIC. So it's a 6-cylinder with 4-wheel drive. This is actually the very last W220 to leave the production line, and it was highly specified as a result, and stayed in Mercedes collection ever since, with less than 40,000 kilometers on the clock. So a really nice example, preserved just how this car might have been if you had one delivered new in the early 2000s. Other innovations this car had: very trick Airmatic adaptive suspension to give that silky smooth ride, like driving on a cloud. It also had something called Distronic, which is adaptive cruise control. Bear in mind, this car came out in the late 90s and it had adaptive cruise control, so really ahead of its time. You know, thinking it's still quite a luxurious option even on a car today to have adaptive cruise control, and of course it stops you driving into the back of people, so it is ultimately a safety feature too. So I mentioned the air suspension, active body control. This might not be the most sporty car ever, but we are here at Mercedes Proving Ground, and you can really feel it working in the bends. It keeps the car level and allows you to have a smooth journey even on the twistiest of roads. So we're now in what I regard to be one of the first of the very modern S-Classes. This is a 2013 W221 S500, the very last example of the W221 ever produced, and this car's only got 3,000 kilometers on the clock. It's an S500, which means it's a 4.7 litre V8, producing something like 430 horsepower and an immense 700 newton meters of torque. So this car is a proper cross-continental cruiser, but it's still got all of those trick S-Class features like adaptive suspension. But the big innovation for this generation was night vision. Unfortunately, it's not the night time, so when I flick the switch I get a warning message in German, which I think says not available because it's not dark enough. But if it was dark enough, we'd be able to see if there was any nice wildlife hiding in this woodland, or of course pedestrians and other things, to keep you and those outside the vehicle safe, because S-Class, it stands for special class, but the other thing it stands for is safety. So we're currently behind the wheel of W222, which is the outgoing previous generation of S-Class. This was actually the very last car to leave the production line and has stayed in Mercedes collection ever since. In fact, it's only got 268 kilometers on the clock as we speak. This thing is literally brand new, despite being from 2020, but it's an S560 long wheelbase, 4 independent seats, so it's got all of the options. 470 horsepower from that 4 litre V8. I have to say, this car is lovely. Innovations that came with the W222 included things like scanning the road ahead to prepare for bumps in the road, to give you the perfect ride quality, as well as other things like attention assist, which of course is a great safety feature. So this is quite a special moment. We're currently at the back of a convoy of every single generation of S-Class from the 116, which was officially the first Mercedes to be called an S-Class, and we're in the latest one. This is the W223, the brand new S-Class, which you can buy right now. This one's an S580E, which is a 3 litre 6-cylinder hybrid. So it's got all the latest technology. Mentioning that hybrid, it does up to 100 kilometers of electric-only range, which is actually seriously impressive for what is a barge. But the really impressive feature on this car, and they do this with every generation of S-Class, is the innovation when it comes to safety. So this is the first S-Class to have level 3 autonomous driving. So that's not just like changing lane for you, a little bit like the car we drove down here in. That's actually, it will take legal responsibility up to 95 kilometers an hour for the control of the vehicle. So you don't have to have your hands on the wheel. You can be doing anything else. And this car is legally in control. So you could be on your phone, writing a book, this car is seriously intelligent. Other things it's got is like ChatGPT AI built in, which is absolutely the future. So really smart car, and still, despite just being a 3-litre, it's still got well over 400 horsepower. So this car is no slouch, but is also incredibly luxurious. And it's now, Mercedes have moved on from Designo, and they've now got manufacture. So that's their new bespoke branch, a little bit like PTS or Ferrari tailor-made or whatever. And this car, the interior speaks for itself, and the exterior colour is exceptional as well. Really nice car. I'm really enjoying it, although there's something about the 4-litre V8 in the S560 in front that just made it that little bit more interesting. Okay, so we've driven every single generation of S-Class now, so it's time to decide which is the best. And actually, it was none of them, sort of. My favourite is the W140. Of course, we drove the grey car over there. However, this is an even better W140 and is without doubt my favourite from the selection, my favourite ever S-Class. This is the S600, so it's got that legendary M120 6-litre V12, which I'll show you now. Of course, this engine later went on to be in the likes of the CLK GTR, the Pagani Zonda, where it was bored out, all the way up to 7.3 litres. Of course, it's merely 6 litres, with over 400 horsepower in this example. But this is still no ordinary S600. The wheels might be a clue, and the California license plate. Come take a look at the mirror finish on these Lorenza monoblocks. I can see myself perfectly in them, better than the mirror I own at home in my house. You can probably tell from the way I look. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger's S600. They've got it in the collection at the Mercedes-Benz Museum, preserving it in Mercedes history forever. But what a special thing to have here. And without doubt, in my opinion, first of all, the W140 is the greatest generation of S-Class. But then, of course, it was the first to use the V12, and the S600 was the ultimate flagship. No one needs a 6-litre V12 sedan, yet here it is, and it's perfect. We take a little look inside. Some nice features. First of all, this car is immaculate. Second of all, I'm going to take a seat where Arnold Schwarzenegger sat, and I noticed something unusual, a little bit aftermarket, I think, stuck to the centre console, but trimmed to be in the same leather as the rest of the car. That is the biggest cup holder, I guess, for a very large protein shake I've ever seen on a car, never mind an S-Class. But everything else in here is exactly as you expect. This is a facelift model versus the pre-facelift SEL we drove earlier. So some little differences, some little styling differences as well. And of course, a difference in name, S600 as opposed to 500 or 600 SEL. But the important thing, and this is something you've got to watch out for on these cars, on the C-pillar is the V12 badge. That lets everyone know, especially back in the 1990s, that money is not a problem. If you can buy and maintain one of these cars, then you were a big baller, someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. One feature that I forgot to mention on the 140 we drove earlier is this very early version of parking sensors. These little chrome spikes pop out from the rear quarters of the car when you put it in reverse to show you where the back of this quite long car is. This is a long wheelbase version, so even longer than normal. So these little spikes, little antennas come up just to stop you from driving into things. Something else to notice around here is the ticket on the license plate, March 2004. So this car hasn't been driven since 2004. It's been with Mercedes for 20 years now, preserved perfectly, of course. A great piece of history for Mercedes-Benz, and a great way for me to end this video, concluding that, in my opinion, the built like a tank, the first with the V12, the billions of Deutschmarks in development, W140 is the greatest generation of S-Class. Not the newest one, the newest one's fantastic, but this one is the iconic. In 50 years' time, people will still love this car, whereas I don't really think too many people will remember the W223 as fondly, albeit a fantastic car, especially with that autonomous driving, but it won't be as fondly remembered as the legendary Bruno Sacco W140 S-Class.